Welcome to ISD's video series on Leaders in Diplomacy, America's Diplomats. I'm Barbara Bodine, and I'm the director of the Institute for the Study of Diplomacy here at Georgetown University, and delighted that you can join us today. A core mission of the Institute is to connect students with foreign policy professionals to encourage a much better understanding of the rewards, challenges, and opportunities of diplomatic careers and to promote excellence in foreign policy. This series is intended to do that by encouraging all Americans to consider careers in foreign affairs. In this series, we engage with a wide range of foreign policy professionals who have served with distinction, many over decades. They exemplify the highest standards in professionalism and commitment and manifest the rich legacy of the United States. They have served around the world advancing U.S. interests and American values and principles, what America stands for, and often in the most difficult of circumstances. For this series, we are very proud to collaborate with the Una Chapman Cox Foundation, which brings you this session as part of their larger project on American diplomacy and foreign policy. Our interviews are available in their entirety on the America's Diplomat website, and we continue to build our library. Today, I am very honored and very pleased to welcome a friend and a distinguished leader in American diplomacy, a trailblazer in talent management, and a proud Hoya, Ambassador Marcia Bernicat. A native of New Jersey, Ambassador Bernicat most recently served as the Director General of the Foreign Service and Director of Global Talent, where she championed the professional growth and the well-being of America's diplomatic corps and the Department of State's employees, civil servants, and local embassy staff. Her career spans 4 decades in nearly every region of the globe, with ambassadorial posts in Bangladesh and Senegal and Guinea-Bissau, as well as leadership roles in Morocco, Barbados, Malawi, and India, among others. On her path to becoming one of the department's top career officials, she also served as Undersecretary of State for Economic Growth, Energy, and the Environment, where she navigated some of the most complex global challenges at the intersection of diplomacy, science, and sustainability. Her deep experience in both policy and personnel has left a lasting legacy in the department and on America's interests abroad. She brings not only a deep institutional knowledge, but also a passion for mentorship, a reputation for integrity, and a career defined by excellence and service. So welcome to America's Diplomats. I am so glad that you could join us.
Thank you.
We like to start our discussions by looking back at the beginnings. What initially attracted you to a career in foreign affairs? What steps and processes led you to decide on this? In other words, what is your origin story?
Yes, thank you. And so glad to be here and always glad to be back at Georgetown. So I didn't set out, like many of our colleagues, wanting to be a diplomat. I grew up near an army base and caught the travel bug from my classmates who came and went every 2 to 3 years, whereas I felt stuck in suburban New Jersey. And at the time, my ambition was to become a history teacher in the DoD school system. I figured I could combine 2 passions that way. Went to Lafayette College undergrad and applied to Georgetown and was rejected to the School of Foreign Service MSFS program. Went to work for Procter & Gamble for 2 years, which was enormously educational and lucrative. I was able to pay off my student loans, but wasn't getting the travel bug, satisfied. Applied to Georgetown again. I guess I was a lot more interesting to them the second time around. Joined MSFS, and it was one of my adjunct professors who was a retired Foreign Service officer who was encouraging all of us to do an internship.
Mhm.
Mine was in Monrovia, Liberia, the summer after the rice riots, which ousted the president at the time, Tolbert. Excuse me, and mere months before Sammy Doe took over in a bloody coup.
Right.
I got to do the economic officers and the commercial officers
Yes.
portfolios
Mhm.
and came home saying, sign me up.
Right. Yes.
And so took the exam, finished Georgetown, and
the rest is history.
the rest is history.
That's
Yeah.
Fabulous. Yes, I remember in embassies when I was still serving that we would have summer interns, and because we tend to rotate out in May and show up in September, the embassies are empty. And so, yes, we would have interns as the economic officer and the political officer, and you are not going to be just answering the phone. You're really it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. Before we get to the rest of the questions, I would like our audience to start thinking about your questions. We're going to start taking your queries in the Q&A box in just a few minutes. When you do send in your question, please indicate your name and your affiliation. So question 2, you have served in a very wide range of countries throughout your career. Thinking back to your early postings, what were some of the pivotal lessons you learned that shaped the way that you approached your work going forward?
I go back to my first tour in Bamako, Mali, and I'm an unapologetic type A. I joined expecting one day to work towards and become an ambassador, but I just come out of the corporate world, and so I was trying to determine what the proper path was, what the ideal postings were, and so on and so forth. And the management counselor sat me down. He said, Marcia, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to figure out what the ideal path is. He said, there is no ideal path.
Yes, good. That's the right answer.
Right? And he said, do what you like.
Yes.
Go where you want to go. Choose your bosses, choose your issues, choose the cultures you want to work in. You will thrive and advance, and you'll enjoy your career every step of the way.
Person after my own heart. It's exactly the right advice.
Right. The other pivotal piece of knowledge I gained was from both the DCMs, because I had 3 DCMs in 2 short years, which is another story, not mine, theirs, and the ambassador, Parker Borg.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Parker Borg, and he worked with especially an aide mission director named Dave Wilson. Like many of the countries we serve in, aid was the single most important relationship we had with the country. And I saw those 2 leaders spar over issues about approaches to take and personnel, not so much personnel issues, but I'm sure they did, but always to the advantage of the American people. And they always found a way to go forward. And so many of us, I think, experienced inter-agency relationships that were fraught with competition and non-cooperation, which is a real waste in many ways. But these 2 men, by example, taught us how the interagency should look. Dave ultimately always recognized the ambassador's preeminence, if you will, but they worked together. The ambassador respecting Dave's perspective, experience, and the mission that he had to carry out.
Yeah, that's a wonderful lesson to learn up front.
Exactly.
Exactly. Because State Department doesn't do it alone. And, we should do it with, sometimes we do it in spite of, and the in spite of approach to interagency doesn't work very well long term. You have the unique perspective of having been Director General of Foreign Service and Director of Global Talent, which is you're in charge of all of us, in charge of all the people and our careers and what we do and how we do it. You help shape the workforce. What skills or characteristics do you see as fundamental to being an effective diplomat? And what gives you hope? And I presume you have hope for the next generation of American diplomats.
So, first of all, being able to end my career as Director General was a real dream. I mean, we all had those dream assignments. Some we were able to have, others that got away from us. But that was a real key one for me. I always put at the top of the list intellectual curiosity.
Yes.
Because, as you know, we are generalists, most of us. And even if we concentrate on one region, we are required to move from country to country for many different reasons, good reasons. And that means you've got to constantly be a student, an active student in understanding everything about the issues and the country and the people you're working with. And someone who is very rigid in their approach, they tend to not do very well. So I put that at the head of the list. Integrity comes next.
Yes.
One of my earlier jobs back in the department was being the chief disciplinarian for the Foreign Service. Not a job I sought, by the way, but I was able to work for Linda Thomas Greenfield when she was Director General. And so it was well worth it. But, it really dawned on me that we put people out into the field, oftentimes not totally alone, but
close to it,
right? Without much supervision. How are they behaving when we're not watching? Right? And so are you delivering the messages you need to? Are you being a good steward of the taxpayers' dollars? All of those things count enormously. Of course, flexibility, the ability. We look for people who have lived or worked overseas. Thank goodness that's not a showstopper, because I wouldn't have entered the Foreign Service if that were true. But people who are ready and willing to change where they live, how they work, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, substantive knowledge. Again, your ability to learn is more important than how many facts you've managed to retain in your head. But both are important. Do you understand the history of the United States? Do you understand our government? Do you understand how we interact with people? And then I have to emphasize this at this point in time, is the broadest sense of the diversity of the American people. We are, by design, the most diverse country on the planet.
Yeah.
We have welcomed waves of immigrants, and even people who came here under duress, and I'm talking about people who came here during times of slavery and indentured servitude, have all contributed enormously to this country's success. That gives us the best comparative advantage in the world in dealing with the world. And so I always emphasize, when I talk to audiences, I would ask for people to raise their hands if they were diverse. And as you might imagine, people of color and people, women tend to raise their hands first. And I would insist until all hands were in the air. Why? Because we are all different from one another. We needed people who had grown up on farms. We needed people who had grown up in inner city. We needed people who had grown up on reservations. We needed people who were first generation Americans, as well as people whose ancestors dated well before this republic began, and so on. Why? Because the more perspectives we bring to the table, and the private sector has shown this as well, the more productive we can be, the less likely we will misinterpret what we're seeing and how we convey what the United States needs and wants to partners, whether they are partners who are willing or partners who are, in fact, adversaries.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that you've just said. Thank you. And particularly this idea that we talk about the rich tapestry, the rich legacy of what makes America unique and special. And it's everybody.
Exactly.
And I know that there are senior Foreign Service officers who are Native American, first generation, and rural, urban, Midwest, you name it. And that's what makes us who we are. And that's how we need to represent ourselves. And it's not just a good thing to do, it's a smart thing to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I
Exactly.
like your focus also on character traits. It's not, you need to take Art 101. It's, you need to ask, yes. Um, you've hinted at this, but we know that none of us all succeed on our own. None of us do. And who inspired you, and who helped shape how you think about diplomacy and how to be an effective diplomat?
Well, that list is really long.
Yeah.
as you can imagine.
Yes.
But I'll give you three names that the audience may not be as familiar with. Um, Two were served in the State Department, one did not. The first was Donald McHenry.
Oh, yes.
I had learned about Donald McHenry primarily because when I was in Liberia, Andrew Young, who had just been essentially fired as the ambassador to the UN, did one last trip, and it was a trip to advance commercial interests with Africa. And he came to Monrovia, and so I got to meet him. And so I was fascinated by his firing and whoever this new guy was who was taking his place, which was Donald McHenry, who had been a Foreign Service officer and then left for the world of think tanks and academia and the private sector. The other individual who I'd grown up knowing about, because prior to Dr. Martin Luther King, he was the most preeminent African American in the 20, who was active in the 20th century. And my parents were huge fans of his, and that was Ralph Bunche.
Oh, yes, of course.
And I did not know much about Ralph Bunche, except that he was the first person of African descent to win a Nobel Prize. He did it for negotiating a ceasefire between Egypt and Israel in 1948.
Oh, my goodness, I did not know that.
Exactly. He was at Dumbarton Oaks as we formed the modern economic framework. He was a partner of Eleanor Roosevelt's in drafting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And he served in helping set up the UN and helping countries decolonialize. So, this huge diplomatic Superman of sorts.
Absolutely.
That people hardly talk about today. He was eclipsed. He was also a civil rights leader. Our library at the Department of State is named for him. But again, the breadth of things he worked on, and especially legacy issues, were enormously inspiring to me. And then the last person that I mentioned is Ruth Davis. And I think anyone who came anywhere near Ruth Davis's orbit was somehow made better. She was tough as nails. She was a former director general who also left her mark on the legacy of how we build our personnel, both in terms of process, but especially in terms of the people who are formed for and then chosen for leadership positions.
It's interesting you bring up Ralph Bunche. I mean, because he is such a remarkable figure in American diplomatic history, and also of African descent, and remarkably unknown now.
Exactly.
Need to do something about that. He helped shape so much, and he's so forgotten and shouldn't be. And of course, Ruth Davis and Don McHenry are remarkable people. Don McHenry's still with us.
Yes.
Diplomatic life. You said that you were interested in diplomacy because you had friends, military friends, who came and went, and so this travel thing looked interesting. We do go through constant transition in our lives. It's new countries, it's new cultures, it's new challenges, it's new issues. What practices help you stay grounded as you were doing this constant, not only relocation, but re-education and rethinking and restructuring of yourself?
Yes. So I call them the 3 F's: faith, family, and friends. Faith, I always I've been told, I've spent a number of years working in either Muslim majority countries
Mhm.
or countries with large Muslim populations. People would say to me, do you wear your cross? And I say, yes. It provokes the most incredible conversations,
Absolutely.
and it's an outward sign of my inner faith. But I take to heart that God wants us to ask for help. And I
Mhm.
ask for a lot of help. I even ask for parking spaces. And it works, by the way. Um, I would just say, but being able to go back to, and again, I think if you're a person of faith and you look at what our faith demands of us, it demands service. It demands that we be kind to one another and to the planet that we live on, and to do right and be right.
Mhm.
So if ever I was in doubt, if ever I was worried whether things would work out or not, prayer was a big piece of that.
Mhm.
Family. I have an incredible family, and they were all, except for my father, very upset that I wanted a career that took me away from them. Especially my mother. I
Oh,
could have
yes.
never left home and she'd have been fine
Oh,
with
well,
that.
that's just mothers.
Right? So, but my parents came to my first tour in Mali, and they even went to a village. I always had that photo of them sitting with the elders in the village. I wrote, and this will sound familiar to you. We began the service before the internet, and in
Oh, yes.
Mali, phone calls were exceedingly expensive and hard
Yeah.
to schedule. I wrote 20, 30, 40-page letters
Oh,
back
yes.
home to my parents. And my mother, bless her heart, kept all of them. So
Oh, you have kind of a living, you have your own history.
I do.
Oh,
I
that's
do.
great.
But they cheered me on. They helped. They always reminded me that this career doesn't work out. You come home and start again. We're proud of you. But that was the kind of reassurance I needed. My siblings, my sister came to all but one of my posts, and extended family and friends. So I was able to share what I was doing with people, and help them then understand when I was going through tough times and I needed to lean on them. I count among my friends, our colleagues. Not unlike a family, you don't get to choose them all, but
Yeah.
you live and work together in the kind of proximity, particularly overseas, sometimes back here in Washington, and you learn who you can rely on. You learn who's relying on you or want to rely on you. And so I found, with the enormous goodwill, it breaks my heart that people think of people in the civil service, the foreign service, government service,
Right.
as being lazy and corrupt and uncaring. It's
Not what I saw.
not at all. I have a favorite anecdote, if you'll indulge me. I was a Nepal desk officer when an earthquake happened. Everyone, I think, who had ever been to Nepal was calling to find out if a village or an individual they knew had survived. I was there at 7 one night, and a woman called, and I picked up the phone and said, Nepal desk. And she said, oh, I didn't think anyone would be there. Now, snarky Marcia would have said, then why'd you call?
Yeah.
Fortunately,
Okay. But you restrained yourself.
I did.
Okay.
And fortunately, this answer came up and out before I even had time to think about it. And I said, your tax dollars at work, ma'am. How can I help you? And those are the colleagues I know, and those are the government employees I know. They go out of their way to help. They go out of their way to do, even if they're gruff, even if they are not, even if they're telling you something you don't want to hear, they are giving you the best that they have. And they do it off hours because, as you know, crises and needs aren't all constrained to the workday. And we do it for the love of service.
Yeah. Yeah, I do sometimes remind students who are thinking about diplomacy that if you're looking for a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday job, no, we're not it.
Nope.
The world happens when it chooses to.
Exactly.
And you better be ready.
In spite of the US's best efforts to have the world work at our speed.
No, they don't. They don't work in our time zone. They don't work on our work week. And if Mother Nature decides to have an earthquake, she will have an earthquake when she pleases. Thank you very much. So, yeah. I'm going to go to some other questions now from students. Um, if you could sit down with your younger self and you're just starting out in diplomacy, what is the one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Mm. Uh, I think part of what I would say is don't be so anxious.
Mm,
Um, for anyone who suffers from imposter syndrome, I have suffered from it my entire career. Now,
yeah.
somewhere around halfway through, and this is what I would tell my younger self, I learned that that feeling of not maybe being quite qualified or quite ready
Mm-hmm.
was actually my mind, my body telling me that I was about to be stretched in a new direction, to be
Yes.
challenged in a new way.
Yes.
And that rather than be fearful that I wasn't the right choice for the job, to just dig in and recognize it's going to take some effort to get to the level you want to. But you don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over again,
No.
right? You
No.
want to keep growing and
Yeah.
learning. So I would say learn to trust the imposter syndrome as a sign that you've taken that next step
Yeah.
up the rung.
Yeah. And I think I had and when I was a first tour officer, I was the control officer for some world-class
Mm.
violinist. And just before he went on, he went into the bathroom and threw up like crazy. And I thought, oh dear, he's going to be sick. We're going to have to cancel it.
Mm.
And he came out and I said, are you okay? And he said, oh, I do this before every concert. And it's a way of, imposter syndrome is a way of grounding yourself. If you don't have imposter syndrome, then you're either complacent or really arrogant.
Neither of which helps.
Neither of which are good. And so, yes, imposter syndrome is actually a superpower.
I agree.
This is from Jordan, who's a master's student in IR.
Mm.
How do you define success in a foreign service career? And how did that change from your younger self to your current self?
Yes. So, really good question. My younger self measured success in promotions, in getting the assignment I wanted, in getting kudos from my boss when I did a good job. And all those are easy metrics, I would say, compared to the ones that I pretty quickly realized were giving me the greatest amount of satisfaction. And that was able to help someone, was able to change someone's life. You know, if you have looked into a career in the Foreign Service, you know that at least one of your first 4 years serving as a generalist, you must serve as a consular officer. And a lot of people see that as drudge work. It is very monotonous, very trying, very emotional to be interviewing people for visas. It is the single largest volume of work we do, which is one reason it's a rite of passage. But the much more important reason is that you learn how we protect our borders and our economy through the visa process. And even more importantly, you learn to make decisions based on not enough information, right? You don't know everything you need to know about the person. You certainly don't have enough time, maybe 3 minutes if you're lucky in a high volume visa issuing post. But you must make your best decision. And that is a real learning skill. It's a skill that is difficult to learn in another way, but it's a master class as a consular officer. But I raised the consular work also because whether or not someone gets to visit the US, gets to go in an exchange, gets to study in the US, you have changed that person's life. I like to think, and I'm confident, that people who come here for whatever reason leave with a better understanding of who we are and a better affinity for who we are and what we do. I have seen it. One of the most recent examples, I think, was when the Bangladesh army told the prime minister that they would not fire on students during demonstrations a year ago. Many of those officers would have studied in the US alongside our officers and seen what our military does. And that's an extraordinary impact to have, that you can't buy it. You
No.
certainly can't command another country's army to do one thing or the other. But they saw how a Republican small R army works in a democratic society, and they emulated that.
Hmm. Yes, and it's not something you can go in and do a 2-week course as the revolution is going on. Yes. Can we just borrow you for a little while? We have some training we need to do for you. No, it's a long-term investment, and you don't know when or how it will pay off. But the absence of it will.
Exactly. So for me, success, if I can't tell you how many lives I changed or had a slight impact on, but I'm confident that over time, my greatest legacy will have been the number of people I helped and the number of people I helped understand who we are, and the number of things we helped make happen.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just kind of build off of this. We have a question from Sophia, who's studying communications, and she asked a very interesting, slightly different kind of question. How important is storytelling and communications in diplomacy? And how do you build trust across cultures?
Oh my goodness, thank you so much for that question. Again, when we began our careers, communication, I think, was seen sort of as a side effort, something that was interesting and additive, but not core to our mission. And thankfully, I think most, if not all, practitioners today would say communication is key.
Yeah.
It begins with the hardest thing we have to do, particularly if you are educated, if you are type A. You want to talk, right? But it is so important to listen.
Yes.
And building trust is about not just expressing yourself, but also listening. So always put that first. And you'd be amazed at what happens or what additional things someone is willing to tell you if you just wait a minute. You know, you have that conversation, there's a silence. Our instinct is to fill the gap. But if you just wait a minute, it's amazing what else your interlocutor might add. I always tell people, especially young people, that if you can do something in your life that allows you to tell your story over and over again, over time, that's really important. Now, again, I come from a family of storytellers, and there's some whoppers in there that are told. But also, being able, when you're telling a story, you are by definition putting the information into a format or into a form that you hope the person you're talking to can understand. It's not preaching, right? It's different from delivering a démarche, an official diplomatic message, which we do a lot of in the Foreign Service. But I'll give you a really quick example. I was at a conference, and I've done this a lot since then, on trafficking in persons. And I think for most foreign audiences, when they hear an American talk about trafficking, they see us as preaching. We're certainly advocating for a very important human rights issue, but not something we have any experience with. And I thought to tell the story of my paternal grandmother. My father was a lot older than my mother, and he was born in 1898. So that gives you a sense of, his mother was born in 1865, right after the Civil War. She was an illegitimate child of a Shinnecock Indian, which is a tribe that still has a reservation on eastern Long Island, and an African-American father. And the tribe made my great-grandmother give her daughter away. She gave her to a white family in Brooklyn as an indentured servant.
Oh my goodness.
Now, my grandmother was really blessed in that they taught her to read and write, and they liberated her when she became an adult and she married. But she was a trafficked person.
Yeah.
And I could see the room change as I mentioned that. It's like, oh, so that's not just an academic or an official issue for you. So by telling our stories, we can gain, and whatever, it can be a personal story, it can be a story about our country, but that gains
Yeah.
confidence and builds bridges in a way that citing facts and
Yeah.
opinions don't.
Yeah, and that's a remarkable story in and of itself. And I would love to sort of go further on that. But I think that making it personal, making it relatable. This is not, God save us from démarches, which tend to be very dry. But
Oh,
being
yes.
able to recraft the démarche so that you're getting the issue into a way.
And by the way, we all have incredible stories
We do.
to tell.
We do.
All of us.
We do. And it also is making a personal connection to the person you're talking to. If you do just the dry démarche, it's one official talking to another official.
Mm-hmm.
If you start making it personal with a story and grounding it, you're now talking to that person as a person. It changes the whole nature of the conversation.
Exactly.
And I could tell another story, but this is your interview. I want to just kind of flip that a little bit and say, this comes from Jose, who's a master's candidate. When you've had these conversations or experiences with world leaders, diplomats, activists, civil society, what did you hear that changed how you saw diplomacy and how to do diplomacy effectively? What did you learn from one of these people?
Yeah. There were a group of activists in Senegal who were advocating for, there was a president. Senegal, by the way, is one of only 2 countries in sub-Saharan Africa that have always had a peaceful transition in power. The other is Cape Verde. And when I was serving there in 2008 to 11, the president at the time was slowly becoming more authoritarian. And there was a great worry by the United States that he might succeed. And there was a group of activists, young journalists, rappers, political, no political party members, by the way, who formed a group called Yan Amar. I'm sick of it, or I'm fed up with it. And
it's like the kafia movement in Arab Spring.
Yes.
Enough.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah. I'm out of here.
And they would do things like call for rallies, but at the end of the rally, they'd ask everyone to pick up their trash before they left. They would, 1 or 2 of them, hop on one of these little buses, which were really vans, and they would do a rap about, don't let the bus driver give a bribe to the policeman. Everybody chide the policeman that they should not do this. And then they jump off the bus again. So they weren't there to see if it actually happened. But as they were telling me about all of these activities that they did, it really changed my mind in terms of how activism gains grassroots attention. And they eventually became so powerful that they were able to go to the legislature on the day that the legislature was supposed to change the Constitution to allow the president to essentially, I think the goal was to appoint his son as vice president. And every legislator went into the building. They said, you know what's right or wrong, do the right thing. The legislators stayed in there all day and finally sent a message to the president saying that they did not feel they had the authority, including the moral authority, to make the changes he'd asked for.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Great story.
How is that for, powerful? The other quick anecdote I'll say is that one of my political officers political chiefs in Dhaka is a great art collector. And she recognized that artists, there's an incredibly vibrant artistic community in Bangladesh. Music, poetry, literature, especially painting. And she developed a rapport with artists that gave us a completely different take, but a very insightful one on how Bangladeshis saw, again, their shrinking democratic faith. I would have never thought to cultivate artists for political reporting.
I think, and that brings up, I think, another part of effective diplomacy is Yes, you need to know the people in the ministries. Yes, you need to know the people in the government. Yes, you need to know these people. Absolutely. If you stop there, you, for anyone watching this, if you stop there, you are not an effective diplomat. And a gazillion years ago, Ross Perot, who nobody watching this has any idea who he is, said that we could be replaced by fax machines. That's how old the story is. Which presumes that all we do is deliver démarches to government officials. And I think between the importance of storytelling and the importance of getting to the artists and the rappers and these people is exactly, what we're talking about. You've obviously been extraordinarily effective and extraordinarily successful and a wonderful role model for people. I want to ask you, what have you ever learned, because you are human as well, that either from a failure or a mistake you made that really had an impact on you going forward?
Yeah. Oh, there's so many.
I know most of us would have stories that would go on, forever. How did I mess up and survive?
Exactly.
What did I learn from it?
By the way, because I'm human, and you forgot blessed in that list.
Okay.
I mean, so much of what I was able to do, I didn't set out to do, right?
Yeah.
You're in the right place at the right time or what have you. But
you were also the right person.
No.
Okay, but go ahead. But you did mess up at least once.
Oh, no,
At least once. So share that.
One of my favorite examples, and it leads to, I always tell, especially, when I'm mentoring younger colleagues, I always say the worst thing you can do, and we see this play out on the national stage, sadly, too often, is when you make a mistake, admit it. Right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You don't have to give a long explanation. It may be helpful or not, but admit it, learn from it, and move on. If you keep making the same mistake, that's a different problem.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But if you, particularly as a leader, but regardless, if you try to cover it up or deny it, it makes it so much worse. And
also, if you're at a junior level and you just try to sweep it under the rug, or, it's their fault. Yeah.
Exactly. And I saw plenty of that when I was a disciplinarian. But one of my big mistakes was emails were still fairly new. And I was working in Malawi. And even though we had someone who managed our military cooperation program, meaning the training that we provided and the conferences we helped Malawian Army officials attend, that person was in Botswana, quite a ways away. And so one of my jobs was doing the day-to-day work. And Malawi had as big an HIV/AIDS infection rate as South Africa did, thanks to the trucking routes at the time. But all the attention was on South Africa, Uganda. In any event, my Army liaison, who was the chief of staff to the Army chief of staff, came to me and said, Marcia, we need your help. All three of the pilots for the president's plane have come down with AIDS. And
my goodness.
well before there was even rapid testing, much less the wonderful drugs that are available today. He said, we need to train some new pilots. I know we didn't plan for this. We'll swap out other programs, but can you send a message back to Lackland Air Force Base, was where the training took place, and get us slots in the class? But he said, please don't tell anyone, because again, the stigma surrounding AIDS was huge.
Yeah.
So I said, sir, no problem. I'll get right on it. Told the ambassador, told the liaison in Botswana, and we all got to work. And I wrote an email confirming to the person in Botswana the actual reason, because he needed to know how urgent it was. Long story short, we got the training, and I sent back an email to my counterpart saying, great news, we've got the training, here are the dates, so on and so forth. I didn't hear from him. The next thing I heard was from the ambassador, who called me into her office and said, Marcia, we need to talk. Never a good thing.
That's never,
never a good sign.
First of all, getting called in it's like getting called into the VP's office when you're in high school. This cannot be good.
Exactly.
So it's the same. Oh dear.
I had put on top of the email that I sent to my my Army counterpart. I had put on top of the message that came back confirming the travel, the training, and that had a very long tail to it, including the original email that I had sent. Explaining the actual reason.
Mm-hmm.
My counterpart, of course, had to tell his boss, the Chief of Army Staff, what I had done. It was the Chief of Army Staff who called the ambassador. And it was, I like to think not, I was so excited about getting the result and sharing the news that I had forgotten that there was a tail on that email. And I apologized to the ambassador. I apologized to the Army Chief of Staff in writing and in person. I profusely apologized to my counterpart. I explained why I did what I did, but that I had broken a promise that I made. It was very humbling.
Yeah.
Never did that again.
No. Well, as I said, making a mistake, we all do. Making the same mistake twice, then you have a problem. It's, can you learn from it? I could talk with you for a very long time and it would be very good for our audience, but we don't have forever. At least not right now. So I'm going to one last question, and it's from Ahmed, who's working on getting a degree in public policy. In what ways do you think the Foreign Service writ large has evolved, and what does it need to go forward in the new world, a very interconnected and complex world? I know that's a big question.
Goodness. Yeah, but it's an important one.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ahmed, for that question. I've referred several times to the world we inherited, which as young diplomats, which was the Cold War. I came into the Foreign Service with Russian, never served in the Soviet Union or later Russia. But oh my goodness, the world that we inherited involved very quickly, in terms of our careers, the wall coming down, the Soviet Union dissolving, and we thought we had a peace dividend that we were going to be able to take. Remember that?
Oh, I remember that. Yes.
We were going to take all that money.
We won.
We won. Well, and more importantly, we were going to apply all of those resources, human, material, financial, towards making a better world. I mean, it was such a heady moment. It didn't last very long.
No.
And you and I spent the bulk of our careers fighting terrorism. And I think while I would love to say I hope that period is over, I think anyone who's a student of history knows that we have cycles. We don't ever get to say something's done or resolved. For people entering diplomacy today, they have to face a world and a set of challenges that Bill Burns likes to call problems without borders.
Yes.
Without passports.
Yes.
There is no way that any of the issues, the key issues that we face today, terrorism, migration, certainly the environment, world trade, and none of these things and health. I mean, the pandemic taught us a very humbling lesson. None of these issues can be resolved by one country, certainly, or by a coalition of the richest, most powerful, most militarily prepared countries. It takes everyone.
You can't shoot your way out of a pandemic. Go ahead.
Oh boy. And who knew the economic, I mean, again, we always thought of health as being a developmental issue that our USAID colleagues worked on. Certainly there were implications from a demographic standpoint, political and economic issues, but the pandemic taught us that no, health has implications for the world economy, our supply chains, security, who's being wiped out by a pandemic in terms of talent and leadership and all the rest. And so I think today's practicing of diplomacy
Yeah.
has to be global. No nation worth itself is going to give up or relinquish putting itself first. And I've never, in 44 years as a diplomat, put the United States second. That would never be something that we would do. But our interests, our security, our well-being is intimately tied to how the rest of the world is doing. And we're doing our best, in my opinion, when we are helping the world in whatever the issue is. And so I think that's a big challenge, how to represent our own interests, but not subsume them to the work that has to be done to ensure that they are the other that they are served. The other thing that I would say, and I grapple with this, and I'm a bit grumpy, I call myself a digital dinosaur. There are people who were born into the digital age, they are digital natives. And then there are those of us who migrated into the digital age.
I only visited on occasion.
Exactly. As I was leaving the Foreign Service, my younger team, thank goodness, brought to me all kinds of innovations that AI can provide. So we were doing mundane things like helping people search for all of those qualities of different posts that would make their bidding on those jobs more effective. We developed a system that helped our civil service colleagues understand how their skills, what skills they needed to build on to reach the next level of their careers or to change career paths without leaving the Foreign Service. And we did that through a series of algorithms. Our colleagues in Saudi Arabia, when I visited there a year ago, were using AI to translate, and they were checking the translation, but they were exceedingly good already. And the barrier that language still creates, particularly in written form, these are innovations that will free up the human intellect to do more of the work we need to do. How we apply those technologies is up to our colleagues who are younger in the profession or who are looking to enter. And then the last thing I would say has to do with information. It used to be that it was a fairly well-defined set of information, be it in the media or out in the world. We would go to the library. We would rely on certainly the reporting that was done from our colleagues. And those things still exist, but how information is used and misused, I think, presents a particularly difficult challenge for diplomats. It always has, but the proliferation of different information, including for malign purposes, and we saw this in the war against terrorism, for example, make it especially important for that credibility piece that you were talking about. And not only continuing to hold ourselves to critically think about an issue or about information we've been given, but then to help other people do that as well. Because I think too many things happen and have happened on the basis of poor information.
And that's only becoming much more frightening. And we need to be ready for that.
Exactly.
We need to be ready for that. And you're right, it's going to be generations beyond me that are going to be able to understand that. But we can understand where it fits, where it works, and everything else. We are getting to the end of our time. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share? Something we didn't raise that you think would be useful?
Yes. So thinking and talking really to everyone out there who's interested in the career, I would say there will be a hiring boom, and it will come sooner than you think. The boomers are leaving. There is so much work to be done out in the world. I've been urging people to, one, consider a career in public service. If a career's worth is not what you're interested in, although I always tell people, I don't know of very many careers where you can spend 44 years and yet never do the same job twice. You can continue to advance, you can continue to learn, and again, you're not stuck in one place or even one type of job. But there are a lot of people who I think won't be lifers. Think about spending some of your career in government service. We were looking at, as I was leaving, how we bring more people into the Foreign Service in the middle of their careers. Why? In part because they bring essential skills and experiences with them. Secondly, and we applied this especially to things like AI, if you graduate with a degree today in AI and then you join the Foreign Service, your knowledge is rapidly depreciating. But what if you come in mid-career so that you can work on policies or conventions that we're setting up with the world? You spend several years doing policymaking in the State Department, and then you leave again. You then take the knowledge of the policymaking back out into the field.
Yes.
Or you decide to stay, and we have room for you and what you do. So we're looking to find more ways, and I think this will carry on, to have people come in and leave government service without being penalized for it, either in terms of the grade or the salary that they would come in.
Yeah.
Our average entry age for the Foreign Service is about 36.
Wow.
You can come in at 21.
Right.
And you can come in up to age 60. We actually have a mandatory retirement age at 65. But we were getting people throughout that range. Some people on second and even third careers. So I would say try to plan or keep in mind spending part of your working life giving back in terms of government service. I promise you, you'll be enriched. I promise you, you will make a difference.
That is, Marcia, thank you. That was an absolutely tremendous, there was so much fun. And I really do hope that, those who have listened today, those who will access this on our library, will be as inspired and encouraged to really do take up this call. Either as a young'un, I came in at 22, or somebody mid-career. And there's different kinds of diversity. There's diversity of professional background.
Exactly.
So we need a little bit of everything, and we welcome a little bit of everything. And so this was tremendous. Thank you so much. Thank you. This was great.
And thank you. And good luck, everyone.
Yes. See you guys next time.